Yes.
Yeah, call the meeting to order, the Columbia Planning and Zoning Commission. Seating of alternates. Larry, you'll be seated for Vera. She's let me know that she wouldn't be able to attend tonight. John, any changes or additions to the agenda?
No changes or additions, no.
Okay. The minutes of the meeting of December 11th, 2023, any changes or corrections? I'll make a motion that we pass the minutes as presented.
I'll second. Second.
Just- What was that? Is there somebody online? I don't think
That was me. Seconding.
so. Okay, Justin got to it first. Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed, abstentions, anyone? Okay, motion passes. Mary Kay, you do a wonderful job.
Oh, thank you.
Audience of citizens, anything anyone would like to bring up to us that isn't already on the agenda? Okay, we'll move past that. Under unfinished business, we have a public hearing tonight. The procedure for the public hearing, we would ask, after we open the public hearing, we'll ask, these are on proposed regulation changes. We'll ask our town planner to present the essence of those regulation changes. Have any comments from the commission, then we'll open it up to public comments on the proposed regulation changes. We would ask that you wait to be, just raise your hand, identify yourself. Once I indicate that it's your turn to participate, and please speak to the regulation changes that are proposed. And then again, give us your name and address for the record. Understand that we're recording the meeting. So that said, we'll be approaching regulation changes under 51.7, 31.2 and 3, and sections 21.2.1. And we will, John, do you want to go through all of the different regulation changes at once, or would you think that if we handle them one at a time, that might be more?
Yeah, no, I would suggest handling them one at a time, because
Okay.
I think, some are likely to have the bulk of the public comment, and it'd be easier than going back and forth.
Okay.
So I'd be happy to introduce the first one, 51.7 minor modifications, if you'd like.
Yes.
Okay. So this is, and if you'd like, I can put it up on the screen for anyone. Well, actually, I want to do that for anyone watching because they might not have a copy of the packet. Let's see. There it is.
Pardon?
Are you opening it now?
Yes.
I am.
Sorry.
Okay.
And so just, John says so we formally move out of our meeting mode and into a public hearing mode. We don't need a motion for that, correct?
Correct. It's just the item on the agenda. Okay. Are you able to see? Does this look like the correct amendment on the?
Would it help you if I tilt the monitor a little more? If any members of the public don't have a copy?
And can folks online see the screen? Yep. Okay. Great. All right. So this is a change to existing section 51.7, which is minor modification of approved site plan, and we are proposing to include or special permit elements. In many cases, a very minor change to a sort of non-substantive element of an approved plan or approved use would, in ordinary circumstances, require a whole new special permit or site plan review process, including notifications, including public hearings, for something that is truly not substantive. And this was most recently raised as part of the commission's overall approach to try to make doing business in Columbia a little bit more friendly and a little less onerous. You had approved, I think, probably a couple of years ago, essentially a doggy daycare and dog grooming facility that had as part of its special permit conditions a certain hours of operation that very quickly were determined to be too limited. I don't remember the exact number, but it was, let's say, from 10 to 5. And then all of a sudden, there was a lot of demand to pick up dogs after 6 or something like that. And so they wanted to change their hours of operation. However, the hours of operation were memorialized as a condition of a special permit approval. And to just change that from, close at 5 to close at 6 would have required an entirely new special permit application, public hearing, newspaper notifications. And so it led the commission to have this discussion. Are there certain circumstances where you could do a minor change to a site plan or special permit a little bit easier? And so hence this is the language. The added language would be that minor changes to an approved site plan or special permit are acceptable with the written approval of the Planning and Zoning Commission, provided such changes shall in no way affect the overall layout, design, development density, environmental impact, or intended or approved nature of the site plan or special permit use. Applicants may petition for minor modification approval by the commission, there should be approval, by the commission by a written request through the town planner or directly to the commission. And then we added, if determined to be minor, and then added by a majority vote of the commission shall authorize, etc. And then this determination and letter shall serve as the approval for the minor change or modification. And then if the commission determines that the proposed changes or additions exceed the scope of the minor modification, the applicant shall submit a site plan or special permit out of application to the commission for the proposed modifications. So it's essentially it's a judgment call with the parameters of overall layout, design, development, density, environmental impact, or intended or approved nature. Things that exceed that would be a whole new permit process, but things that are deemed to be minor in nature, non-substantive, would be authorized by a vote of the commission to be deemed minor and to proceed. So that is the proposal. That is the reason behind it. I would just note, based on we've gotten a little bit of feedback from the public on this, and so in anticipation of that, I would just note that any special permit requirement that is a fundamental part of the regulation for that use itself. To take a wild example of a special event facility, for instance, anything that is already in the regulations as a requirement of that special permit could not be waived because that is a regulatory requirement. That is not a modification of the terms of approval. Modification of the terms of approval would have to be something that is non-regulatory, but rather was a represented or a conditioned element of the original approval. So with that said, I'm happy to answer questions or turn it back over to you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Powell.
Yes, John, thanks a lot. This is really good. One question. So it's obviously, if there's a minor modification, minor change, it's coming back to the Planning and Zoning Commission, correct?
Yes, this basically amounts to, an application or petition, albeit in a slightly less formal way, to the Planning and Zoning Commission that demands a decision of the Planning and Zoning Commission.
Right. So the question I have, John, is at that meeting, when Planning and Zoning Commission is discussing this minor change, does the public have an opportunity to voice their opinion?
If in this case, if the commission deems that it is a minor change, non-substantive, that would not be subject to public hearing. If they determine that it would be.
I'm just talking about public input, not a public hearing.
Right.
The public can always ask questions at a Planning and Zoning Commission meeting. So I'm wondering if they could ask questions during this process.
That's up to the chairman.
Right.
If it's because this would be outside the standard public hearing process, so the public wouldn't have an automatic right to speak. But the chairman runs the meeting that the chairman chooses to run. So if someone raises their hand, they have the, the potential of being recognized. But, like for instance, if it was a site plan is not a public input process. There is no public hearing for it.
Right. Right.
So it would essentially function as that. It's on the agenda. It is a public matter. People are, welcome to come. But it is not necessarily, unless it's deemed to be a substantial change requiring a new special permit, it would not be a public hearing.
Right, but for the most part, during meetings, we encourage public input, even if it's not a public hearing.
I mean, that's been my experience, but I'm not on the commission.
Right. Okay. Thanks, John.
Bob, to address the point you bring up. So we've got, unlike many planning and zoning commissions, we have two different audience of citizen sessions in each meeting. A member of the public could bring up their concerns at that point. I don't think we've ever really shut down somebody from talking when there's something reasonable to be said, as long it's just the way the process.
I agree, Rick. I just wanted to bring it to everyone's attention, the people that are listening in, that the public, in all probability, will have an opportunity to participate in the discussion.
I think all of us would want to hear what the public has to say about anything we're doing.
Yeah, we're not doing this in a vacuum.
Yes. Okay. So, yeah, and I can think of, just to speak to this regulation change, I can think of 3 separate instances in the last 6 months where we've had relatively minor things that people had to come back with a new special permit application. And it broke our hearts, both the time involved, the money involved, and it was really clear. I know that the main moose had wanted to add some sort of recreational, like a sluiceway or something. And it just was heartbreaking. And it ended up the Board of Selectmen waived the application fee for the special permit. And I can think of numerous other ones, very small. We had, while Hyundai was making a very minor change to their site plan, actually reducing the size of the project. And that's something that we clearly wouldn't want to have had them have to have a new public hearing on. So.
I just make a couple clarifying comments really quickly on this. Another thing, because we obviously have an audience here, and I want to make sure that it's completely transparent, is just so everyone knows, and the reason John is completely right, I'm just reiterating a lot of what he said, but people don't necessarily realize that we have a commercial zone and we have categories of businesses even within a commercial zone that require a special permit. And we're going to talk about that next in one of our other revisions that we're proposing. So it could be in a commercial zone, a completely mundane type of business, and literally, like this was one of the cases that was brought up to us. Is like, I just want to change my hours, or as part of the conditions that we give an applicant as part of the special permit, maybe numbers of certain activities that they can have, or employees, or whatever it is. It could be pretty extensive. So when it's proven that it's not it's especially in a commercial zone, but it applies in other areas too, it's not going to be a major change. It'll be easier for the businesses to be able to go through this process. Now, to reiterate something very specifically that John mentioned as well, because we're talking about land venues and other things that there are regulations for special permits within the RA zone. I encourage everyone to read all of those regulations in depth. They are very, very deep. So we are already regulating hours and specific activities, whereas in the commercial zone, this may just say, well, this particular business type is allowed under a special permit, and there's no specific criteria other than what we provide as a condition of approving the application. So just kind of keep in mind that there is that separation there, especially when we talk about new businesses and wanting to change things. If they have, there's a fee that is applied to the special permit. There's time. There's obviously the public input, which we still encourage public input at every meeting. So we have to take that into consideration too. There's a lot of stack against businesses already when they start up, and we just want to make sure that we're as easy to work with as possible. So I just want to make these comments. Thanks.
The other point I would make is we do have to follow our own rules. If we have a rule that has a limit, hard limit on what can be done on a property, we can't exempt ourselves from those rules. We have to follow them each and every time. So this is way far away from that. This is just minor changes that we've seen come, and we're trying to make our process more efficient and make it more public friendly. Anything else from members of the commission? I'll open up to the public.
Cheryl Whittington, Cove Golden Road. There is a wedding venue going in on the corner of Johnson Road, Golden Road, and Hudson Road. I'm wondering if this special exceptions or special permit would allow them to have, now they're allowed, I believe, 12 events a year. Could they come in and say, we want 40 events a year or longer hours? Is that something that would be covered under this addition to the special permit?
Well, I think our regulation specifically prohibits that number of events.
Well, that's what the special permit allowed, is 12.
But the regulation contains a limit on the number of events.
We can waive that. Yeah, we can't change that. It's already written within the regulation. This would be something that's not enumerated within the regulation that covers that activity. It's a condition that we gave them in order to have their application fee.
Let's say the regulation allowed for 15 events per year and they only applied for 12. Then yes, we could probably increase it to the 15, but we couldn't give them 16. Very clear.
Proof of 15 if I'm not correct. I think it was 15, wasn't that?
That they were approved. I don't have the regulation open in front of me, so I can't speak to the specifics of the
regulation.
Yeah, if you want, I can put it up on the screen. But in the regulation itself, which is 52.7.5, has in the regulation, it has attendance limits. It has which is 200 per event. It has event hours, which are 11 to 11 on Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. No other events on other times or days. A maximum of 15 events shall be allowed per calendar year. So that is in the regulation, not as a condition of approval. So that would require either a variance or a text amendment to change that.
Nothing that could be done under the minor. And that applies as well. So if we look at other examples, winery, farm store, I reviewed the regulations earlier today. There's still there's similar criteria in an RA zone with those other types of commercial activities. Much more stringent than in the commercial.
Any other comments or questions on this? Yes, sir.
They're involved in 33 Golden Road. So we do have some questions here, and part of what concerns me about the proposed change is that some of the parameters that you have identified don't appear to really have been defined. So when we say environmental impact, developmental density, I'm curious what that means, because those are going to be criteria by which you're making these decisions. And I believe I saw it, and so there was some back and forth about what does a minor modification mean, and what does it mean to one person versus another person. And so when we say that, environmental impact, that is part of how you're going to base a decision, right? It's going to be overall layout, design, developmental density, environmental impact, intended or improved nature. So what does that look like? What is an environmental impact? Because, we're going to bypass the processes in place, which should involve a public hearing. I understand, I appreciate the ability to be able to provide information to audience and citizens. It's a little different from having it through kind of a process that's already aligned and in place for that very reason. So it'd be helpful to know what exactly does that mean. I don't think that's an unreasonable question, because you're going to get requests that come in, and some of them might seem a little more straightforward than others, but others might actually have implications, and they may impact people in those surrounding areas. And I think having a sense of what that means, so if you start getting a bunch of these, what exactly, what do this mean? I mean, they are terms, but I haven't really heard them defined. And I have concerns if you're gonna make decisions based on something you haven't defined the actual parameters themselves, then it leaves it very ambiguous. I also have questions about if the process is gonna be somebody submits a letter. Are those letters, are we going to have access to be able to see letters? Are we gonna know what got approved? Are we gonna be able to see what was not approved? Was there any transparency from that perspective? Or is it just they come to you, you guys vote on them, and then we may or may not know about it, unless we see some expansion somewhere? So I'm concerned that we haven't defined the terms.
Why don't we address the questions you've posed already?
Sure.
And then I would ask anyone else to weigh in. I just would like to address some of your concerns. First of all, the first question about the definitions is so overwhelmingly broad. I don't see that there's any way that I personally could answer your question. You're asking such a broad array of questions. The questions are, I couldn't possibly come up with all the instances that could address your question. We could probably be here for a very long time and not do that. I do know that it becomes very clear to us as a commission what we feel are minor changes to a site plan, moving something around slightly, an almost inconsequential increase in the size or a decrease in the size. As it is now, if you want to take a foot away from a building frontage, theoretically, you need a new special permit application. If you want to add a foot here and move 2 feet over here, requires a new special permit. Very onerous for businesses, makes it very difficult to do business in the town. We don't have a full-time professional staff with their own set of standards. And we want to make this not require a 2 to 3 month process for every minor change. Am I summarizing it?
Yeah, I'd be interested in John's perspective as well. I'll probably get a little bit more technical, but there's always judgment that comes that we have to deal with. Our judgment is no different than a special permit application where something's comes in front of us and we have to weigh that. I think some of them, as you said, will be pretty straightforward. There's others that will create a debate, and if it's a sort of debate that says, okay, well, we're going to vote it down, then that has to go back to a special permit, right? So there is that check and balance to it. John may have some other additional information more from a technical standpoint, but I think whatever we do, there's a level of judgment involved. And what we want to avoid is to make sure that we don't make things so difficult and so frustrating that people just stay away from doing any reasonable activity.
Thing is, the key word here, though, is we. It can be perceived that it's any one person. It's not Rick sitting here saying, yeah, I think that's mine or it's mine. It's a decision that's made among a group of commission members with the opinion of the town planner and other parties that are involved in the process. But Justin and I are 50% of the time are going to agree with each other. Rick and I, 40%. I think the fact of the matter is that difference in opinions, and we're all elected by you. That dynamic gives you a certain degree of protection, I guess you'd say, or some feeling of comfort in knowing that it isn't just one decision. It's a commission, and it has to be unanimous decision.
I think it's a majority.
A majority, excuse me, majority.
Some people have actually abstained from the vote, so now it may bring it down to 3 people. So again, I understand you're not going to come up with every, and I appreciate it, Keith, and I respect what you're saying. And I appreciate you can't come up with every scenario, but I haven't heard anything that really talks at all about what an environmental impact would be. Like even an example. So again, it's left so broad that, and then it comes into a letter, it comes into a meeting, and then you guys look at it, and then you decide what it means. We don't have a voice in that process.
No, you don't.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that is part of the concern, because the way the process is now, we would have a voice. And so while this has some benefit, it also has some potential impact on us as citizens, in that our voice in theory isn't guaranteed. You know, it may be available if we're allowed to speak about it, but it's not something that is required. And I feel like in some ways it's taking away our due process and our ability by modifying it in this manner.
I agree with you. And we think it's a reasonable, small amount of discretion to put in the hands of the commission. That's why we propose a regulation change. We're always weighing the public right with individual rights. And we think that this really makes a lot of sense, because we're not looking for wide latitude under this. We're looking for a very narrow range of latitude that's hard to define exactly, which is why we have a commission that's elected that votes on these kinds of things.
Excuse me,
So,
Rick.
Appreciate your concerns.
Rick?
Yes,
One of the things in my mind, and you brought this up before, but I think it's important to reiterate, is that any of these minor modifications are still within the acceptable regulations that we have on the books. We're not going beyond any of the regulations that we have. So, you know, that's in my mind, that's the key issue. The public can participate at the commissioners, at the heads discretion, but again, these minor modifications are well within the regulations that are on the books.
good point well made. Thank you. So this regulation change was crafted in response to very real issues that have come up recently and have been ongoing for some time. And we've always felt we needed some flexibility to address minor changes to site plans, and it is a subjective criteria. And that's why we have a group of individuals who are elected voting on it. It's not we contemplated whether we should allow administrative review on the town of our planner. And it was decided that, well, we really need to bring it at least to be discussed by the commission. And if there's a minor change proposed, there's ways for the public to communicate before a meeting. We'll have a comment session before any action is taken, where there's certainly the ability in the public comments prior to conducting business. And I think we've been very open to comments from the public at each step of the process. So anything else? Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Wondering, have you taken into consideration that with these changes, that the business strategy for most of the businesses now to fall under the special permit or use this as a business strategy when they want to make any kind of changes to the business, that might be their first step, and you may be inundated with these types of minor cost changes. And if you consider that, you just said you're very, not a lot of people, do you think you can handle the influx of these types of questions and requests?
I'm not sure what the question is from what you just said.
I do. She's concerned that this regulation might provide an opportunity for businesses in town, or a business in town, to develop a strategy to use it against the public, meaning that they go in for their first application and then they go in for minor modification. Am I correct?
So, sorry, so maybe I didn't make myself clear. My concern is you're gonna have a huge influx of these types of requests to review and to approve. And do you have the numbers? Do you have bandwidth to take something like that on? This is gonna be very attractive to a lot of
business strategy.
Yeah, if I were a business owner and this is an opportunity, hell yeah, I'd take it.
If I can just, so I think I understand the question. So I think just from a numbers perspective, you're talking about our bandwidth to be able to handle that, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I don't share the same concern necessarily, although I understand the question. I think even if every business that operated under a special permit decided to do that tomorrow, we would definitely have the bandwidth, because There's just not a lot of them. So, and part of the reason, we struggle with trying to make this better is so that, we can make it easier for those businesses that do operate in town. But I think from an overall numbers perspective, we're not talking about a lot of businesses. And we've, as Rick said, and I'll reiterate, these come from real examples, like people come to us and say, what the heck? Like, why can't I just change my hours by 2 hours a day and not have to pay $600 in 3 months? And so we know which examples there are, which, where it's coming from.
I mean, and very honestly, we don't have a lot of business in town. If you just down, I mean, the town isn't geared that. I mean, you've got the 7-Eleven and that down there and the shopping center there. Where else have we got a few things on Route 6, but we don't have a lot of numbers that, and most of those are in commercial districts. So they would fall under this auspicious anyway.
But maybe I'm misunderstanding, and where would the hesitancy be to sharing that with the public and not with the public?
Well, we
Comment. To your point, we don't have that many of them. We're not gonna hold the process up that much. It's just to let people know what's going
Yeah, but-
on in their neighborhoods and in their town.
Yeah, but our meetings are open to the public. I mean, we've got 7 people here tonight, an audience of 7 citizens. Rick's been doing this 30 years. I've been doing it 10. Walt's been doing it 10, and we come here every other week. I've been coming here every other week for 10 years.
Right.
So, I mean, we try to make this stuff as open as we can. I mean, you can get the minutes are online. You don't even have to leave your house to read the minutes of what went on in the meeting. If you have a question, come to a meeting.
To Michael's point, the decisions that you make on these minor modifications, when and how will that be made public and for us to come?
They'd be on the agenda.
After the decision has been made, that it's minor or?
No,
Part of our agenda for the meeting.
Okay, thank you.
And everything is public information.
Right.
Everything.
I don't mean to be argumentative. It's just
Oh,
that,
no, no.
you know, we get a, you can vote us out. I mean. But I mean, we've been coming here a long time. And I think that I can speak for the rest of this group, whether it be no matter what their party affiliation. I think we've always kind of gone by the motto, we're trying to do the best for the people of Columbia. I don't think anybody here would refute that statement. Do we get everything 100% right? Probably not. Not many of us do.
Yeah, just to reinforce, so yeah, the agenda for each meeting is posted online prior to the meeting. There's the records in the building office are open to the public. So if you saw an agenda item and you were curious about it, you can go into the building office and look at the actual presented plan. The packet for, I'm gonna ask our clerk. So if there's a site plan modification, a minor one, that would be part of our packet, correct?
Yes.
And that would be posted online prior to the meeting?
Yep.
So yeah, you could see the actual changes very transparent prior to a meeting. So it's ample opportunity if you want to stay involved with what goes on with planning and zoning to see what's going on. And really nothing we do is in secret other than having, if there's legal action going on, we do have the right to have a closed portion at the end of our meeting for a discussion of active legal cases. And we rarely do that, once or twice a year, if that. So almost nothing is very transparent process. Any other questions, comments from the public? Yeah.
I did have a follow-up question.
Yes.
Trying to understand again what you all be very wrong. So these letters that get submitted, are they going to be referenced in the agenda and talked about here, or does the letter go to the commission and review it outside of this meeting?
It's reviewed in the meeting and it would be voted on within the meeting.
I'm sure you ever know smoke filled rooms anywhere in town. That's already the best. So civic engagement, please.
So I looked at myself like, here, like a scenario. An applicant comes in and says, I'd like to make a change. Are they making an application to determine whether or not they're a minor modification first?
Yes,
Okay. And then once we voted to determine as a group whether or not it's a minor modification, we then make another vote to determine whether or not that they get permission to do what they want to do.
yes,
Okay, 2 steps,
2 steps.
same meeting, 2 meetings.
Or, you know, we could approve it with the determination that it's a minor modification and that we do approve it all in one motion, potentially. That's probably how it would be.
So we might wait for more information.
Right, that's true.
Or we could decide that it's not a minor modification, at which point they would have the option to go out for a new special permit.
Yeah.
Any other questions on this? I'd like to move us on to the next one.
Mr. Chairman,
Pardon me?
John,
Yes,
it's John. I just wanted to, if Robert and Margaret Waldron are not there, I just wanted to read their testimony into the record if I could.
they are here.
Okay. Would they like me to read it, or are they all set?
We are in receipt of a letter from you that brought up your questions, Mr. McGalvey, in this.
Can I just see you another one, so it has some additional signatures on that?
We have that.
It has additional signatures.
Is that the one you sent in the
In a
evening?
corrected date, yes.
Okay.
No, so that was McGaldy.
Same.
This is Waldron
same.
from Cards Mill Road.
I'm sorry, John, say again?
This is testimony of Waldron from Cards Mill Road.
There's a list of names at the end. Originally it was,
So this is a separate email. I'm going to go ahead and I'll show you. I'll put it on the screen. If you can see this is an email that arrived at 5:11 p.m. To whom it may concern. We oppose the proposal of PZC to be given authority to approve a quote minor modification unquote for special permits. Minor modification has not been defined. What the PZC considers minor, residents directly impacted by the change may not. Special permits require additional scrutiny to ensure compliance with the town regulations for approval. Any changes to special permit must include input from area residents. Thank you, Robert and Margaret Waldron, 33 Cards Mill Road.
okay, thank you for reading that into the record. Okay, we're going to move on to item 6.2 and discuss the changes to 31.2 and 31.3 site plan versus special permit uses in CM districts. This is a bit more comprehensive proposed regulation change, trying to change which items require a special permit in this commercial and manufacturing district. John, do you want to speak to the specifics of the changes or?
Sure. So again, so this covers Article 3, Section 31, point 2 and point 3, which are allowable uses in the commercial manufacturing district, CM1. There are 3 permit paths for uses in the CM1. One is permitted uses, which is as of right administrative approval by staff. Those are proposed to be unchanged. The second, 31.2, is uses permitted with site plan approval, which of course is commission action, but in absence of a public hearing and is primarily an administrative review. And the third, 31.3, is permitted uses by special permit approval, which again, as we've discussed with the previous hearing, these require a public hearing and notification, et cetera. As part of an ongoing discussion, the commission has been looking for ways to make doing business, particularly in the commercial district, easier in Columbia. And so after a great deal of discussion, a number of the items that are currently permitted only by special permit approval in section 31.3 have been, many have been consolidated and Several of them have been moved. Um, 9 of them have been proposed to be moved into site plan categories. So that would be an easier, more efficient, less expensive, less time consuming process. Those site plan uses, and again, this would only affect properties in the CM1 district, which is primarily along 66 East and Route 6, would include public utility buildings, package stores, manufacturing, assembly, processing operations, and structures of 20,000 square feet or less, pet boarding, daycare, and grooming, major home occupation in a existing single-family dwelling, restaurants and clubs, including outdoor entertainment, patio dining, or microbrewery, if not directly abutting an existing residential use, convalescent homes, residential healthcare facilities, if not directly abutting an existing residential use, funeral homes, and multifamily dwellings. A number of those have their own sets of individual regulations that govern them. And then the number of things that would be removed, all of those would be removed from the special permit category, with the ones that made reference to existing adjacent to existing residential uses. Those would still remain special permit, specifically for the reason that some of the members of the public expressed this evening, that if something is significant going up next to a residential use, it requires a little bit additional scrutiny. But if it's business next to business, the purpose of this reg is to make those uses a little bit easier to undertake. So that's the gist of this proposal.
So the point I would make about this, if you go to the proposed modifications to section 31.2, starting with item 10, there are a number of items here that previously did require a special permit that we are just putting into permitted by site plan approval. So not subject to a public hearing in essence. And we'd love to hear your comments on them. And those are sub-items 11 through 19. For the most part, those items were requiring a special permit. The items that John delineated.
I'd be happy to answer any questions of clarification from the commission. Yeah.
Okay. Any comments or questions from the commission?
No.
Mr. Powell?
Yeah, John, good job. I think we've discussed this before at meetings. And this is just
Yes.
really putting it in writing so that we can review it. So, and I don't think there's any surprises here from what we've previously discussed.
Yeah, this is basically the result of initially discussion at the regulations committee and then open commission discussion of the last couple of months.
Anything else from the commission members? I'm going to open this up to any questions or comments from the public on these proposed changes. Let me give a moment for you to read through. I would also point out there's some items in here that we would still require a special permit, especially restaurants and clubs that are adjacent to a residential use. And we use residential use as opposed to residential zone because along the Route 6 corridor especially, there's a lot of commercial districts that have a lot of residential uses, grandfathered residential uses. We're very sensitive to a business opening there that may in fact be open past normal residential hours, especially after dark, causing light. Theoretically, the light shouldn't bleed off the site, but activity coming in and out of a driveway adjacent to a residence where it was a nice quiet spot before, we really want to leave that under a special permit review. So there was a reason why we picked that verbiage, residential use. because there's a lot of non-conforming, grandfathered non-conforming residential uses in that commercial corridor going up Route 6. We want to be protective of that. Protective of the residential uses. There's no questions or comments from the public. I'll move on past this topic. Anything, anyone? Okay. So next item up, family home daycare, section 21.2.1. So,
If I might, Mr. Chairman?
yes, please.
So this is basically, and I put this on the screen, hopefully people can see that, section 21. Adding a new number 6 to the permitted uses with staff approval in residential and agricultural districts, which is basically everything that's not commercial in town. Basically to add a new category of family daycare home or group childcare home as defined by the Connecticut General Statutes. This is basically following up a change to state law that took place last June that basically required all municipalities to treat the processing of permits for family daycare home and group child care home, which again are small scale, home-based, residence-based daycare facilities under a certain number of population. I think it's less than 12. To operate out of an existing home as of right. So the state basically said, hey, towns, you are going to allow this. And so this is merely the town of Columbia complying with that change in state law and referencing back specifically to the uses as defined in the statutes. So this is just getting us right with the law.
Any other comments from the commission, questions? I'll open it up to the members of the public. Any questions or comments from members of the public? Thank you. Nope, no comments from the public on that. With that, before I make a motion to close the public hearing, anything else from the commission members? So I'll make a motion that
Excuse me, Rick, wait a minute. Don't we have section 3.1 and 3.2 review?
That's not on the hearing agenda.
Pardon me, John?
That's not on the hearing agenda tonight.
Oh, okay, sorry.
yeah, we're not there yet.
Okay, yep,
No
fine,
problem.
thanks.
I'll make a motion that we close the public hearing.
I'll second.
Justin, any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed, abstentions? That's unanimous. Okay, we're gonna go back into our regular meeting format out of the public hearing format. What's your pleasure? You want to vote on the proposed regulation changes?
That'd be my first one.
Sure. I'll make a motion that we accept all regulation changes as proposed for sections 51.7, section 31.2 and 31.3, and section 21.2.1.
I second.
Okay. Mr. Powell, any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Mr. Tabors abstains.
Only because of the way the motion was presented. I would like to see it broke out, but that was.
Okay. Next up is item 7.1, preliminary discussion with Heidi Washburn regarding possible future development of an art village.
Appreciate it, I appreciate you guys.
That was cool.
Thank you.
Thank you. I've never done this before, so you tell me what I'm supposed to
Well,
do. Sorry.
Why don't you explain, we have the document that you sent us. And, tell us a little about what you would think that this would look like if we adopted.
Well, my ultimate goal is for us as adults to do a little less of what we're doing here and a little more play. A little more art, a little more play, a little more nature, so we can all kind of get back to where we come from. And that's my goal, is to just make a retreat type setting, where people can come and get away from the computers and the phones and get back into nature and get their hands in some clay and some paint, and also empower artists, because a lot of people, they're at home and they do their art and they go to work all day and they get on that hamster wheel and they come home and they just don't want to do it anymore. This would give them the chance to be able to have a place to teach something that they love to do and hopefully make money doing something they love. And the tiny house community, or tiny little home, and part of it is really what will support the artist community, because that's kind of, I don't want to take money away from the artists. So this kind of supports that end of it, and also gives it a retreat type setting where people can come in and, leave the city and spend a weekend or a long weekend, hopefully, getting back to their roots. So this is my life dream. So I appreciate you guys seeing me, because it's been a little difficult to get anybody in any town to even listen. So I really appreciate you guys taking the time.
So let me, I haven't really absorbed this in a lot of depth.
Absolutely.
And it's a beautiful presentation.
It really is.
Heidi, I put it on the screen. I don't know
Oh,
if,
thank you.
so people online can also see. I don't know if there's anything you want me to bring up and you could speak to.
So basically it's in stages. So, it's, you start off with a few tiny houses and some bell tents, and, you work your way up. You see here, so ending I want to have, tiny art seat kind of houses, with some luxury bell tents, a public washroom, and then 6 art buildings. I envision them separately. I have these cute little arched cabins out of Texas, that are fairly inexpensive, and they're very cute. And have a vision of 6 of them in a nice little view with a nice little fire pit in the middle where everybody can congregate together and share all their gifts. So it's like I said, it's really about going back to nature and going back to our roots and putting our phones down and, just being us, because we all have kind of gotten away from who we once were. We spend so much time worrying about everything, whether it be, the kids getting to the dentist, am I getting to work on time? Did I pay my bill? We're spending so much time attached to our devices. I want to see a place where people can just let it all go and just get back to who they were. And that's my ultimate goal. And I'm not very good at this public speaking.
You're usually,
I don't see a location. Where is it?
I'm actually looking at Hearthstone Winery. Hearthstone Winery. So it's a beautiful piece of property. I think it's wonderful to have the winery there to begin with. It's a great starting point. It's a great attraction thing where people can come, and I want to have also a healing center, and it's just a perfect place where people can come and have a little bit of everything. You can wake up in the morning and you can go have coffee in the art gallery, and then you can go get a massage, and then you can go get your hands in the clay, and then, end it with a glass of wine and sit in the hot tub under the stars and reflect on your day.
so I'm just to frame this from its own perspective.
I know, this is the part that's good.
Well, no, so what you're proposing as a concept, in practice, you would propose this being done on a large enough residential site in a residential area? I mean, on a practical basis, I don't see any area in town that's commercially zoned that would even have a hope of supporting what you're proposing, maybe a few sites. So you would propose to do something like this in a residential area. And our concern probably as a zoning commission is that there's enough buffer so that it doesn't impact the adjacent residential properties.
So I'm willing to work with you guys if you guys are willing to work with me.
Have you looked at the feasibility of these small, tiny houses? I assume they would be year-round, fully insulated and heated.
Some would be.
I don't know that there's any legal way for you to build non-year-round structures.
Well, not, when I say non-year round, some of them will be balconies that we would take down in the future, so they should just be up for the summer.
Okay,
But they would have, so, for the, the little mid times when we can still get away with it, and it's still nice outside, because a lot of those people don't mind that, so.
Are you modeling this after something you've seen somewhere else?
No, actually, this is my own creation. I was working at a job that was killing me, and I was in pain every day and wearing a neck brace to bed and mouth guard so I didn't ground my teeth. And it came to me that this is your dream. This was kind of a dream when I was a child, that I always wanted to have an artist community. And it just all kind of downloaded into my brain one night, and I just wrote everything down, and I said, this is what I'm gonna do, whether anybody likes it or not. Like I just throw caution to the wind, and one way or another, I'm going to get this done. I don't want to be on this hamster wheel about it anymore. I want to make a peaceful place where people can come and I can help other people, and that's my goal. The name of the project is called Our New Life Project, because it's not about me. It's about everything. It's about community. It's about bringing everyone together. It's about helping people communicate. It's about, this world has to change somehow.
okay. So from a zoning standpoint, would you foresee people renting these tiny houses a week at a time, 2 weeks at a time?
No.
Couple
I
days.
think most people will come for long weekends. I mean,
Okay.
from what my research and myself going and doing certain things, you go for like a Thursday through a Sunday, and you go back to your regular life.
That was my question, so it'll be like an attraction for the weekend.
Exactly. I mean, I'm sure there'll be people that would stay a week, but I think most people come for long weekends. There's also like the retreat market, and that it's growing. There's the retreat market for health and wellness is booming. Even since COVID, it's coming back up again. And there's a lot of people out there who just want to see change in the world, and they just, they want to better themselves. And one of the parts of this is to build a retreat center where, I have a friend who does, she manages retreats, and she's like, there's a demand for it. She's like, all you need is a nice, beautiful place where people can come. It's quiet, that they can come and just, learn whatever that is that they're learning, whether it be yoga, whether it be, healing past trauma as children. There's so many of them that are out there. And, they're doing it all over the world. And to have a place that's kind of centralized for New York and Boston, but is out of the way. When I drove up there, I just thought, this is just such a beautiful area. And it's away from everything. We want a place that's a sanctuary. And I just thought this would be perfect.
Rick?
Yes, Mr. Powell.
Yeah, I think this is a really interesting concept. And I think at this point it is a concept. We as the Planning and Zoning Commission would be looking at more specifics to see if they meet our zoning regulations.
Right.
So there was one page that had some specifics in it. It said like 10 houses and 4 something else. John, can you scroll down?
Yep.
This one here.
It's under amenities.
10 houses, 5 rentals, public washrooms, art buildings, that type of thing. So obviously, you know, we'd have to know what the site is. We'd have to see if and if these things meet our regulations or they don't. So, you know, I think it's a great concept, but I think we need more specifics, i.e. site plan, site identification, site plan, showing buffers, that type of thing. Don't you think, John?
Well, actually, the reason that she's here is currently under our residential agricultural regulations, we don't have anything that it's approaching the mix of proposed uses that are be currently allowed in the zone. And so, you know, I encouraged her, Heidi, to come and talk about her vision and explain the process to get from, you know, her vision to something on the ground. We would have to go through a process of creating a new regulatory use category that would be some kind of mixed classroom, residential, you know, resort events kind of mix of uses that would have sort of its own use category and internal regulations. Then once that was approved, in what?
Excuse me, John, couldn't this be considered like an adult camp?
I
I
don't.
know Astawamis has the
Yeah,
open.
you can want house to warm
No, that, I mean,
Yeah,
that's for children, but this could be for adults. Could it be considered a camp?
Yes.
We would, well, looking at, so we have, actually, if I'm gonna stop sharing for a quick second and then bring up, the zoning regs. So hopefully people can you see this, the zoning regs 21.2.3? So these are the, uses allowable by special permit in residential zones, residential agricultural zones. So we have summer camps and day camps subject to 52.7.9, which is fairly specific, and I would say probably does not apply to this. We have, you know, event facilities that, you know, we, number 16, that this isn't really that either. And it's not really, it's, you know, it's not precisely a park or a playground or agriculture or a club. It's kind of a couple of elements of each one, and then some other things that are totally new, which is why I think it would require some kind of text amendment to the regulations to clarify, to basically define what Heidi has in mind, and then if the commission was comfortable with it, putting it in the reg, similar to you've put other things like indoor riding arenas over the last couple of years, event wedding facilities, and then would come the phase that Bob, you referenced, where she would have a site plan and we would look at individual impacts for that specific lot. Obviously, she's already telegraphed someplace she had in mind, but we would have to change the reg first and then look for site plan after.
John, I'm gonna weigh in on this a little bit. So something that requires a zoning regulation change, I think you've taken the right first step in coming to us and saying, what do you think of the concept? And I'm gonna poll the commission members based on what information we currently have. And if they're supportive of this, whether they're supportive of it or not, still pursue a zoning regulation change. And I think touching base with us as you craft a zoning regulation change. So let me explain first. Any member of the public can propose a regulation change in any town in Connecticut. So this would require a regulation change to allow what you're doing. So the question is, you would need more input from the commission. And I suggest we have other meetings going forward if the commission is supportive of this in very broad strokes at this point, no committal.
What's the size of that property?
So in the early stages of a discussion, if the commission said, yeah, no, we're open to the concept of it, but we would hope for A, B, C, and D in your proposed regulation change. There would be interaction back and forth. And there's a whole process. It's gonna take time to get to this. Because there's gonna be some interaction with us if the commission is supportive of the concept of it. And the next step would be to interact a couple times with us to get a better idea what you would need from a regulation change and what our thoughts are. Or you could just write a regulation change and propose it with no input from us. I think it would be more efficient for you to have some interaction with us. And nothing is committal at that point. You're just asking a bunch of individuals who are on the commission, what are your thoughts? I'd also ask members of the public what they think. Some forum for you to garner public input about this so that you come to us and say, by the way, I had a focus group and, this is what we heard. And that's assuming that the concept is looked on favorably. And then at some point, it would be up to you to propose a regulation change. And you have.
We could.
What? We could, but for an individual to come to us and say, I have this idea, will you develop it and put it into action? We don't do that.
Could she work with John on creating a draft though?
Well, yeah, but that isn't how the process really works. If an individual needs a regulation change for a brand new idea, I think back many years ago, somebody came to us and said, well, I want to be able to do wind power on my farm. And we said, sure, we're wide open to that idea. Bring us some proposed regulation changes. No, I want you to do it. Well, no one's asked us before, and
My concern would be, and I totally understand where you're coming from. My concern from Heidi, maybe your perspective would be, have you ever written a regulation?
No.
Okay, so I think maybe.
Any help you guys can give me, I would greatly appreciate it.
Yeah, and obviously wouldn't be appropriate for us to sit down and write it for you, but I would just hope that there'd be some direction to help her so that my fear is people get discouraged and then don't do stuff. And I think this is a great idea. It's just a matter of, in our, just for public knowledge, in our regulations, if something's not allowed through a regulation, it's not allowed. So it has to be enumerated. So yeah, so whether you like that or not, but so that's, I think as long as you felt that there was no line of communication, which there should be, and I like the idea, I just think that, that writing the regulation would be a challenge. So.
Yeah.
It's fine, but.
So that said, I would put the question out to the commission. Any thoughts about this?
I don't think it's much different than some of the campgrounds you see and finding the road and you're driving up towards Woodstock to the campers on the river and everything else. I mean, it's not too dissimilar from that type of functionality. I'm not sure about the zoning in those particular towns. It seems to me that they don't have.
They don't have the
Eastford has none. But she's right. These are popping up all over the country. I ran into one out in southern Massachusetts a couple of years ago, year and a half ago, of my place called April Hill. On Upper Mountain, it's called April Hill, it's Upper Mountain Road. I lived there 50 years ago, so I know it quite well. But they had a whole bunch of, theirs was geared towards teenagers. But it was on 150 acres up there. And that population trail went through the back and the whole bit.
So would it be the consensus of the commission that we're generally supportive of looking at this concept?
I think it'd be great for the town.
I think it would be wonderful for the town too.
Oh.
Yeah, so there's the mechanics of crafting a regulation that would enable it. And we have a lot of people that have come forward with ideas, and we can't just, from a practical standpoint, take a vision that you have and then try and create a regulation around it. When people have a vision, many times they'll try and sketch out the framework of a regulation. You're free to interact with our town planner. I'm sure John has some great ideas on this.
And
John's been wonderful.
Yeah, and John, one thing that we at least do our due diligence on, we can look at those other regulations and see, well, okay, they are close enough where we made some minor changes through the regulation revision subcommittee type of thing. You know, my sense is that without reading everything, that she'd probably have to create a new regulation, but we'll keep that at top of mind as well.
And it may be as simple as taking an existing sub-item in our regulations with a paragraph that describes the scope of what's allowed, or it may not be just a paragraph, because we have a lot of different things here.
Yeah.
I can tell you this, if this is going to exist in a residential neighborhood or in a residential zone, we'd be concerned about noise and concerned about traffic. We'd be concerned with impact on abutting residential properties. That's one of our primary charges. But if it's a very low impact type of use, I look at here we have the winery owner is on our commission, so you're not gonna say a thing, right? Okay.
He's got his mouth shut.
So that being said, I get really proud when I tell people, yes, we have a wonderful winery in town. And yeah, it's beautiful. Yeah, it's, so that being said, to have something like this, whether it's at that site or a different site, what I've seen here in the presentation, I would love to see this in our community.
Yeah.
You know, it's got to be in the right place, and it's got to be the right access, the right setting, and so on. So yeah, I think we'd be overwhelmingly supportive of considering something that would enable something like this. Yeah. So that said,
Good job.
yeah, very, very supportive of it. I would love to see this in Columbia. As I envisage what it might be based on the presentation. Any other thoughts from the commission? Yeah, but this could be a very good fit, but we're way far away from that. Dave?
I'm the new member of the commission. When we look at something like this, do we concern ourselves with the business plan at all, or is it just the physical?
It's the zoning,
Just
the zoning,
I see.
yeah. You know, just like, we really can't consider her vision as an individual. We have to consider a vision as it exists in a regulation and the definition within the regulation. Because we have to assume that if it were developed, there was a regulation change and it was developed, and it got sold the next day, we don't consider the ownership or anything like that.
It's the land use.
Okay, thank you for the presentation. I think it's a
Great job.
delightful idea. I hope this, and if you feel stalled, 1 or 2 meetings down the road, come back to us. Maybe we can give you some ideas. Okay, thank you. Under item 8, next item is section 3 proposed revisions. And
Yeah, there's nothing on section 3 right now. We're still working on that one through.
so this is a subcommittee that's been meeting. Justin is the head of the subcommittee. I'm on the committee. Mr. Tabor's on the committee. Sorry to call you Justin and him, Mr.
It's all right.
So-
Okay, a lot older.
That's true.
Well, not doing it down.
Right, we still on the wall.
No, so within our subcommittee, we're looking at the regulations as a whole, plus anything that comes up as problematic or troubling, so that we can make appropriate regulation revisions. The one on section 3, we have not revisited. It is still on the agenda to hone in on that a little bit for structures. 8.2, right, I'll take your direction on where you want to go with this. The planned neighborhood housing has been the primary subject that we've talked about over the last few meetings, subcommittee meetings. We had a subcommittee meeting before this one, at 6 p.m. I have the latest draft of that regulation if people are interested in looking at it. The idea with the neighborhood housing is a lot of this is old language from like retirement type of housing in Columbia. The idea is to broaden it to make things a little more affordable and give a developer a density incentives so that they can put on the appropriate piece of land, they can put more units per acre. obviously, we're not to the point where this is in public hearing, we're still discussing it. One of the things that we've done with this draft is to try to eliminate some of the micromanaging that was in some of the existing language. There's a lot of stuff that was redundant regulations. There was verbiage around items that probably weren't appropriate for zoning to weigh in on. And we've tried to create a situation where someone has the opportunity through a special permit to ask permission to build higher density housing units with an affordable housing incentive, so that if they set aside 20% of those, they get a higher bump in density per acre. Is essentially, it's a high level way of explaining it. So we're still in the process of debating that. We have the latest draft here in language, which I just finished today, so I'm sure not everybody's seen it, but
So that'll be part of the minutes.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's kind of where we're at, Rick, unless you want to add any. or
So
Walt might add anything
we've
to
been
it.
meeting before most meetings as a subcommittee at 6 p.m. and the public's open to that. We've had several members of the public and we've had really good input, and it's a somewhat informal, and Justin's done a wonderful job of taking what could be a very complex set of regulations and distilling them down into something that's very streamlined and efficient and expansive in terms of not so much easier to understand. We're trying to attract people to develop more affordable housing and more affordable housing. If we can gut out huge chunks of the cost of developing a housing unit through having very reasonable regulations, that's what we're trying to do. It's heartbreaking where the cost of construction has gone. And so, some of the concepts that we're open to are, we'll call them private roads. They aren't roads. They would be multiple units serviced in a development by a private roadway, which in essence wouldn't be meeting town road standards, and the town wouldn't maintain them, and there would be a homeowners association potentially, or ownership structure we're not even addressing. It could be that these are apartments with a central owner or a condoized, each living unit owned as individual units under the Common Ownership Interest Act, either as a condo style development or a planned unit development. And we're wide open that we want all options on the table so that we can hopefully make our housing stock expand in the town. And the next step, Justin would love to have somebody who's done this type of development in a rural community give us a perspective on what they would like to see in the regulation.
Rick, on that, the three-pronged thing that we had to watch for the land use. Mike France, the guru of planning and zoning in the state, did a great job on, what do you call it?
Mark, you're talking about Mark France?
Huh?
Mark France?
Yeah, Mike France. And what do they call the
Cluster development?
you put a small addition to the house, they call it
Accessory dwelling unit.
Yeah, something else we need to address, yeah.
I mean, he did a great job on that in affordable housing, which I don't know if you got that link to watch that. It's an hour and 45 minutes.
Well, I've been watching.
Now, I was talking to actually Rhonda, you might want to get a hold of that. That was great, the job he did on there. He's kind of the guru. He started out as a planner for 7 years. I think he was West Tech, and then he went back to law school and became an attorney. And he is really the expert on planning and zoning in the state. That was his thrust of that module.
Could you, okay, can you put a link to that in our minutes so that the
It's on
public
the
can?
board. John sent it to us. It's
Yeah, but
it's
for the
third-
public.
It's the third one, right, John?
You're talking about the trainings that were available through the UConn website?
Yeah, it's because Richard is one of them.
Right.
And then I can't think of the other guy's name. And
Ken Slater.
yes, and Grants was the third one. And just click on the link and it's an hour and 45 minutes. Well, I've watched it once and half of another time, but I still can't get it all straight. I'm a slow learner. But it's really, what we're talking about.
Do you see the website on the screen right now?
Yeah, yeah.
So this is, I think this is what
It's
he's
the third
talking about.
one.
The,
Yeah.
that Mark Brandt did a presentation about fair and affordable housing, and I think he
Right.
covered accessory dwelling units among other things. This was,
Does a great job.
I could send this again.
Yeah, that'd be great. Keep on
yeah,
us.
Mary Kay, I think this is the link that you had sent out a couple times.
Yeah, that's a Yukon thing, yeah.
Yes, there's no reason members of the public can't
They can get that too.
take a look at.
Yeah, he's starting to talk, and I've talked to him about it a few years back. A lot of these houses that have been built over the last 15, 20 years, are the 3, 4, 5,000 square feet. They're gonna end up breaking them up into 2 or 3 modules and for families, because we don't have the need for 6,000 square foot houses anymore. But anyway, it's another,
Okay,
whatever.
all right, I'm gonna move past this. John, anything under communication and reports?
No, nothing new. I would note that we're now, even though we're now in the new year, so ideally all commissioners will have done the training that Commissioner Courier was just discussing. Our report, there is actually no state reporting on that. All commissioner training reporting basically goes from planning and zoning to the Board of Selectmen. And we have to submit our report by March 1st of this year. So I will, in the next couple of weeks, just be confirming with individual commissioners that you completed training, and Mary Kay and I will assemble a report to the selectmen by the end of February.
Okay, anything, open discussion, item 10, commission, anything, anyone? Mr. Powell? Okay, anything from the audience, any comments, questions? Thank you. Nothing under executive session. I'll make a motion that we adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor? That would be unanimous. Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, Mary Kay.
Thanks, John.
That's
Good job.
Yeah.
Thank you very